He set her on fire and just watched.
Oh my God.
A woman, Debrina Kawam, was burned alive on a New York City subway train.
It's just awful.
If you find this kind of deep dive into real-life mysteries and tragedies interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll be uncovering what happened in this horrific case and exploring the bigger questions it raises about safety and vulnerability in our cities.
Yeah, definitely. Big questions.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We know the victim was Debrina Kawam, a 57-year-old woman originally from New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
It's heartbreaking, but it took over a week to identify her because of the severity of the burns. Fingerprint analysis was ultimately what helped give her back her name.
Oh, wow.
It really makes you think about the agony her loved ones must have endured during that agonizing wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
And adding to the tragedy, we learned Debrina had recently been staying in a city homeless shelter. This detail, unfortunately, isn't unique to Debrina's story. Homelessness is a major issue here in New York City and across the country. It's a stark reminder of the vulnerability faced by so many.
For sure.
Before they identified Debrina that one, there was unfortunately a lot of misinformation circulating online. Even a fake AI-generated photo was being passed around as her.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's alarming how quickly false information can spread in these situations, don't you think?
Yeah.
Have you ever encountered anything like that online?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It seems like it's getting worse and worse.
It's a growing concern, for sure. But there's also a brighter side to this story amidst all the darkness. A vigil was held for the then unidentified victim. It's powerful to see the community come together to show empathy and support, even for someone they didn't know personally.
That's nice, yeah.
Now let's delve into the disturbing details of the crime itself.
Okay.
It's a chilling scene. Imagine this. Debrina was sleeping on a subway train at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue station. It was early morning, December 22nd. Suddenly, a man later identified as 33-year-old Sebastian Zapata approaches her with a lighter.
Oh, God.
What happened next is almost too horrific to comprehend.
I can't even imagine.
He sets her on fire, and to make matters even worse, he fans the flames with his shirt.
What?
And then incredibly just sits on a bench nearby and watches as the fire engulfs her.
Oh, my God.
The randomness of it all is just staggering. Police say these two didn't know each other, never even spoke before this. What could possibly drive someone to do something so heinous to a complete stranger?
I have no idea. I mean, what could even...
It defies any logical explanation.
Yeah.
It really does. And for those of you watching on YouTube, if you find these deep dives into criminal cases compelling, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us.
Definitely helps keep the conversation going.
Exactly. Now let's shift our focus to the suspect, Sebastian Zapata.
Okay.
He's currently facing some extremely serious charges. 4 counts of murder and 1 count of arson.
No.
His defense. Yeah. He claims to have no memory of the event, blaming it on heavy drinking. But there's surveillance footage, and let's just say it doesn't paint a pretty picture.
Oh, really?
It is. And there's an interesting twist to this story. It turns out Zapeta had been deported from the U.S. back in 2018. He then illegally re-entered the country at some point after that. This adds a whole other layer to the investigation and raises some serious questions about immigration enforcement.
Oh, wow. That's
Absolutely.
a whole other thing.
So we've got this horrifying crime. A suspect with a complicated past and now, understandably, concerns about subway safety in New York are bubbling up again. It's important to note that overall crime rates on the subway have actually gone down in recent years.
Oh, really?
Statistically speaking, the subway is safer than it's been in decades.
Huh. Interesting.
Right. But it's hard to ignore the fact that there's been a recent string of high-profile violent attacks. There was even an incident on the very same day as Debrina's murder, where someone was pushed onto the tracks in front of an oncoming train.
Oh, my God.
It does make you question your safety when using public transit.
Yeah, for sure.
It really does. And this is what we're trying to do in these deep dives, explore these tough questions and shed light on complex issues. Right? We encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. How safe do you feel using public transportation? Have you ever felt vulnerable or witnessed something disturbing? Let's keep this conversation going. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a deep dive.
Yeah, please.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Sounds good.
See you soon. We're back with our deep dive into the tragic case of Debrina Kawam. This case has really gripped the city, and it's sparking important conversations about so many things. crime homelessness, and what it means to feel safe in a place like New York.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before the break, we were talking about the recent rise in high-profile attacks on the subway. It's enough to make anyone uneasy, even though statistically the subway system is considered safer than it's been in years. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, statistics can only tell us so much. I mean, the perception of safety is just as important as the actual numbers. When you see these horrific incidents happening, it's hard not to feel vulnerable regardless of what the data says.
So true. It's a complex issue with a lot of layers. I mean, you have this seemingly random attack on Debrina, which is just horrifying in its own right.
Yeah.
But then you layer on the fact that she was experiencing homelessness, which makes her even more vulnerable.
Right.
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of this growing anxiety about subway safety in general.
It's a lot.
What does it all mean? Where do we even begin to unpack something like this?
It's definitely a lot to process. I think on an individual level, it forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. The reality is that random acts of violence can and do happen. And unfortunately, certain populations like those experiencing homelessness are often at greater risk.
It's a sobering reminder that life can be incredibly fragile.
For sure. But amidst all the darkness, we also need to remember the glimmers of hope. We talked about the vigil held for Debrina even before she was identified. That outpouring of support from the community, I think, speaks to the human capacity for empathy and compassion. Even in the face of tragedy, people wanted to come together to offer solace, to show they cared.
That's a powerful point. It's easy to get lost in the negativity, but there are always those who choose kindness and try to make a difference. For those of you joining us on YouTube, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness in the face of adversity? Share your stories in the comments below.
It's nice to remember we're not alone in all of this.
Exactly. And it's through these shared experiences that we can learn and grow. Now, beyond the individual impact, this case also shines a light on some larger systemic issues. Things like homelessness, mental health, and the cracks in our social safety net.
Absolutely. Debrina's story, though tragic, is not an isolated incident. It represents a larger societal challenge that we need to address.
You know, it's interesting. Before we started this deep dive, I was reading a report about the rising rates of homelessness in major cities. And one of the things that really struck me was how many of those experiencing homelessness also struggle with mental health issues.
Yeah, the two often go hand in hand.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what if there had been more support available for Debrina? What if she'd had access to affordable housing or mental health resources? Could this tragedy have been prevented?
It's impossible to say for sure, but it does underscore the need for more comprehensive support systems for vulnerable populations.
I couldn't agree more. This isn't just about reacting to tragedies after they occur. It's about creating a society where these tragedies are less likely to happen in the first place. And that means investing in preventative measures and addressing the root causes of homelessness, mental illness, and crime.
Yeah, for sure.
We've talked about the decline in overall subway crime rates, but even with that statistic, this case, along with the others we mentioned, has people feeling on edge.
Yeah.
What can be done to make the subways feel safer?
It's a multifaceted challenge. I mean, increased police presence is one approach, but it's not a magic bullet. We also need to consider things like better lighting in stations, more security cameras, and maybe even having trained social workers available to help those who might be struggling with mental health issues or homelessness.
It sounds like a holistic approach is what's needed here, one that goes beyond just law enforcement and considers the social factors at play.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of safety and support.
And that probably involves difficult conversations, right? About how we balance the need for security with individual liberties, about how we allocate resources and prioritize funding.
Those are tough conversations to have for sure, but they're necessary because at the end of the day, everyone deserves to feel safe and secure regardless of their circumstances.
Absolutely. And it's through these conversations, even if they're uncomfortable, that we can hopefully start to find solutions.
Yeah, I agree. We can't shy away from these difficult issues.
For our viewers who might be feeling overwhelmed or anxious after hearing all of this, I want to remind you that you're not alone. It's normal to have these feelings, and there are resources available if you need help. We'll be sure to include some links in the description below.
Yeah, please reach out if you need support.
Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've talked about the horrific crime, the suspect's background, and the larger societal issues that this case has brought to the forefront. What are some key takeaways you want our listeners to walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, we need to remember Debrina Kawam. Her life mattered, and her story deserves to be heard.
Absolutely. We can't let her be forgotten.
Beyond that, I think it's crucial to recognize the connection between homelessness, mental health, and public safety. These issues are intertwined, and we need to address them in a comprehensive and compassionate way.
It's a call to action, really, to be more aware, to advocate for change, and to support those who are struggling.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a heavy topic, and I want to thank you for staying with us. For those watching on YouTube, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the issues that matter. We'll be right back after a quick message. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the tragic case of Debrina Kawam. It's been a heavy conversation, but an important one. And before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about the need for a holistic approach to public safety. What does that look like in practice?
Well, it's about recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. We can't just rely on law enforcement to solve these complex issues. We need to invest in a range of strategies that address the underlying social and economic factors that contribute to crime and violence.
So things like affordable housing initiatives, mental health services, job training programs, community outreach.
Exactly. It's about creating a web of support that helps people get back on their feet and prevents them from falling through the cracks. We also need to address the systemic inequalities that make certain populations more vulnerable to crime and violence in the first place.
That's a crucial point. This isn't just about individual choices or failings. It's about the larger systems that perpetuate these cycles of poverty and disadvantage.
Right. We need to look at things like access to education, healthcare, and employment opportunities. We need to challenge discriminatory policies and practices that create barriers for marginalized communities.
So it's about creating a more just and equitable society overall.
Absolutely. Because true safety and security can only exist when everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Well said. It's a daunting task, for sure, but it's one we can't afford to ignore.
I agree. We all have a role to play in creating a safer and more compassionate world.
And that starts with awareness, right? With educating ourselves about these issues and engaging in meaningful conversations.
Yes. We need to challenge our own biases and assumptions. We need to listen to and learn from those with lived experiences different from our own.
And we need to hold our elected officials accountable for creating policies that promote justice and equity.
Absolutely. Our voices matter. We can make a difference.
You know, it's easy to feel overwhelmed or even hopeless when faced with tragedies like this. But I think it's important to remember that we have the power to choose how we respond.
I agree. We can choose to be paralyzed by fear or anger, or we can choose to channel those emotions into action. We can choose to be part of the solution.
Beautifully said. And for those of you watching on YouTube, we hope this deep dive has sparked some important reflections and inspired you to take action. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking discussions.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed, please don't hesitate to reach out for support. There are resources available to help you cope with difficult emotions and find ways to make a difference.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. And remember, even small acts of kindness and compassion can have a ripple effect. Let's choose to be the change we want to see in the world.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.